Little dear, little dear, what could have brought your life to such an early end on this cold and bright winter morning so crystal clear? Little dear. Little dear, little dear, the night is cold and I am all alone. The night is cold and I am all alone. Shine, written and narrated by Rick Hall. Three weeks has passed since my dad and Uncle Elvie went into the woods, and now my dad's getting antsy. We know it's near time to go back in. It's the perfect night to go, says my dad, in a hushed voice, cocking his head as he pulls back the kitchen curtain and stares into the dark. The moon's covered with a cold mist, and we've just enough light to show us the way along the trail, but not so much it'll show our shadows on the hillside. But Mother don't want us to go. It's a school night, she says, and even though I missed the first 2 weeks of classes to help my dad and Uncle Elvie get the corn out of the field, I was still able to catch up with the rest of the kids. And wouldn't it be a shame, she says, if you fell asleep during studies tomorrow? Grandmother don't want us to go neither. She sits in the corner, rocking in her chair, and spits a wad of tobacco into the coffee can on the floor. Her rocking gets faster as Mother makes a bigger fuss, till she can't hold back no more. The devil's in that holler, starts up Grandma. Ain't no place for them boys. But before she can finish, Uncle Elvie cuts her short. Aren't no devil at all, he says. It's only Mr. Stevens, who'd just as soon shoot you as look at you. Uncle Elvie looks at me and Jack and Jerry, all serious. Then he winks and goes back to playing cards. "'Tis the devil," says Mother, giving my dad her look, and Mr. Stephen knows the devil's come for his bottles. "Uncle Elvie can't go," says my dad, "since he broke his leg falling out of the hayloft." "And ain't it a shame it weren't his neck," says Mother, "instead of one of his little Irish bird legs?" Me, Jack and Jerry laugh, but not like we always do when Mother cracks on Uncle Elvie, 'cause none of us, me, Jack, nor Jerry, wants to go. We know it'll turn out the way it always turns out, and there'll be hell to pay. But my dad gives Mother the look, and she shuts it and tends to the dishes. That's that, and off we go to the barn to hitch up old Nancy and load the bottles into the wagon, 'cause there'd be even more hell to pay if we didn't. Old Nancy's blind, born that way, but she'd made the trip through the holler enough times to know her way. My dad slaps the reins on old Nancy's rump, then clicks twice with his tongue inside his cheek to get her moving. Her milky eyes roll in their sockets, searching left, right, up and down, and her ears flick to and fro, listening for the sound of the wagon wheels switching from gravel to dirt as we roll through the barnyard. My dad gives her a "yah!" and old Nancy whinnies back. And just like that, she picks up her pace, and we're headed out across the field towards the woods. Me, Jack, and Jerry lay low in the back of the wagon, holding down the bottles to keep 'em from clanking. The wagon wheels get quiet when we hit the rain-soaked leaves at the trailhead. I peek out from old Nancy's blanket and see Grandmother's scarecrow standing in the field, wearing Grandpa's clothes. Their tree-limbed bodies are bent crooked like old Grandpa, too. Hunched over in his old coveralls, soaking wet in the night rain, the scarecrows watch us pass. Before we know it, we're up into the woods where the scarecrows can't see us, where Grandmother says her land ends and the devil's begins. Me, Jack, and Jerry huddle close under old Nancy's blanket in the back of the wagon, trying to stay warm. And wasn't we wishing for snow instead of a cold November rain, stinging our faces and freezing our hair till it hangs stiff from our heads like icicles on the barn eaves in January? The straw stuffed between the empty bottles keeps 'em from clanking against each other and busting, and keeps 'em quiet, too, when we get deep into the woods. I rake a pile of straw around our feet to keep 'em warm. The rain's falling steady and kicking up the dry smell of the barn when it hits the straw. Jerry's about to nod off, squeezed tight between me and Jack. Grandmother says Jerry's got the angel face of his mother when he's sleeping, and the eyes of his devil father when he's awake, Mother throws in, always giving little Jerry a pinch on the cheek and a wink when she says it. Halfway up the ridge, the rain slows to a mist, and the moon comes out. It's certain to be near midnight, and now Jack's nodding off. I start to nudge him, like I do when I see him falling asleep in school. But then I think better of it. If I let him sleep now, I can take my share of winks on the way back home while him and Jerry tends to the bottles. I stick my head out from under the blanket, and I see my dad sitting up on the wagon seat. From behind, he looks like Uncle Elvie, but I can tell it ain't, 'cause Uncle Elvie's missing part of his right ear from when old Nancy bit him. My dad's ears are sticking out from the sides of his stocking cap, and even in the dark night I can see his red curls hanging wet and frozen on his shoulders. The moon shines off my dad's rain slicker, and for a minute it looks like there's a big white hole in his back, and I can see clean through him, like he's hollow. But the wagon moves, and the moon shifts, and the hole in my dad's back fills up, solid black again, like wet tar. I'm feeling miserable cold and trying to keep Jerry and Jack warm under the blanket when the wagon wheel hits the big rock we always hit, sticking up in the mud. The wagon jerks to a stop, and old Nancy snorts. My dad slaps the reins and shouts low, "Get up! Get up!" Old Nancy tries, but the rock is too big for us to go around, and we roll back a few feet on the trail. The bottles in the back of the wagon start clanking against each other, and my dad gives me the look over his shoulder. "Watch the feckin' bottles, Landy, or I'll take your ass to the smoke shed when we get back." I move quick to stuff more straws between the bottles, 'cause me, Jack, and Jerry think the smoke shed's the worst place in the world, and my dad likes it that way. It don't take much to get my dad pissed off enough to send us there, especially when he's drinking the shine. We're crying, begging him, "Please, my dad, we won't do it again." But for the life of us, we can't figure out what it was we done. The switches crack like a whip, and with a dull swoosh they wrap around our legs till they raise blood and welts. It's the worst pain we ever knowed. But for me, the worst part of the smoke shed is the smell of the smoked boar swinging overhead. The smell of it fills my nose and moves quick to my stomach. And Mother wants to know why none of us boys, me, Jack, nor Jerry, likes the smoked meat when Grandmother cuts it down and brings it to the table. "It gets stuck in me throat," I says, "like a lump of something I can't never spit out." In the back of the wagon, I scooch closer to the bottles to hold them steady. The dad yells, "Yeah, get!" and gives old Nancy another snap with the reins. Even old Nancy knows how my dad can get when nothing but a few miles stands between him and his shine. If no bottles gets broken and we have a good fill, we can all head straight to our beds when we get home instead of heading to the smoke shed. Old Nancy finds her footing. My dad pulls the reins to the left and the wagon rolls over the rock and down the hill we go in no time. And even though we counted the bottles back in the barn, I start counting them again, trying to figure out how long it'll take us to fill them. 1, 2, 3, 6 rows of bottles across the back of the wagon. 1, 2, 3, 5 rows of bottles deep. 30 bottles. An even number, thanks God. An odd number, and that'd be all it'd take to give my dad reason to fill that extra bottle for himself to drink on the way back to the farm. It'll take at least 2 hours to fill 30 bottles. And if we fill them fast enough, my dad might not take that strap to us and tell us to work faster, you lazy sons of bitches. Old Nancy's counted her steps from the barn, like I've counted the bottles, and knows exactly when to stop the wagon at the bottom of the hill. Jack and Jerry's heads raise up, and their eyes open with a start when they feel the wagon stop. We're deep into the holler, and the rain's stopped a falling. I look out from under the blanket and see part of the old tin roof of the stillhouse on the other side of the hill. It's overgrown with shrubs and vines so thick, if I didn't know exactly where to look, I couldn't never find it. "And that's the way it's supposed to be," growls my dad. "And if you ever tell a soul where it is, I'll beat all of you to within an inch of your life." Knowing how bad it feels to get the switch in the smoke shed, and how close I think I am to the end of my life when a good lashing keeps me sleeping on my stomach for a week, I shut my mouth and never tell a soul. And Jack and Jerry, and even Mother knows it too. My dad stops the wagon just outside the door of the still shed and hops down to walk old Nancy around, turning her to face back up towards the hill. I slide the gate off of the back of the wagon, and me, Jack and Jerry, starts unloading the bottles. We all three got that dead tired look on our faces, and we're hoping my dad will be in the mood to fill 'em and load 'em fast and get back to the farm so we can roll into our beds before the rooster starts crowing. I look over and see my dad reach under the wagon seat and pull out an empty bottle. Number 31. And I'm wishing Uncle Elvie hadn't broken his leg falling out of the loft so he'd be here instead of us. Jerry's in the back of the wagon so he can hand the empty bottles down to me and Jack. The moon's reflecting off the bottles at our feet, and it's like a dozen bright eyes looking back up at us. We carry all the bottles into the still house while my dad climbs to the top of the ridge, carrying bottle 31 under his arm. I see him up on top of the hill through the trees, near where Grandmother says the Devil's Land begins. He looks up at the moon, then looks into the woods and stands perfect still with his head cocked, just so, to listen. After he's satisfied nobody followed us, he climbs back down the hill with his bottle still tucked under his arm and comes inside the still house where me, Jack, and Jerry are waiting. We know to keep quiet as a field mouse. My dad closes the still house door behind him and crouches down so we don't crack his head on the beams. It's all pitch black till we hear the match strike. My dad's face lights up behind the flame. When he puts the match to the wick in the lamp, our shadows stretch across the walls and the ceiling, bending our bodies like the scarecrows in the field. I see the outline of the copper tub in the corner, sitting up on bricks for legs. A pinched coil of copper drip tube sticks out of the side of the tub and feeds its way into the top of the oak barrel Grandmother used to use to catch rainwater outside the house. Near the bottom of the oak barrel, another copper tube sticks out from the side and coils up where it hooks on a rusty nail in the wall. A large tree stump waits nearby where me, Jack, and Jerry sit and wait for my dad to give us the okay to start filling the bottles with the shine. My dad adjusts the light from the lamp, and the shadow of the still stretches up the wall, and for a moment it looks like one of the old boars that Uncle Ellaby hunts in the woods. I start feeling sick, thinking about the dried blood behind the smoke shed where the dogs wait for slaughter scraps. My dad walks over to the still with bottle 31 in his hand. Me, Jack, and Jerry watch as he unhooks the coil from the nail and holds it down low to the floor so the shine can start flowing. My dad starts talking to the copper pot and smiling, like when he's talking and smiling at Mother after a night of drinking and dancing to Uncle Elby's fiddle. "You're a beautiful sight," he says to the copper pot. "Just beautiful." Me and Jack and Jerry are sitting on the stump in the shadows, watching and listening as my dad talks to the still like we ain't even there, and I'm wishing we wasn't. Bottle 31 is first to get filled. Then my dad says, "Get yourselves busy with the rest of 'em." We jump to it fast, sliding the bottles over to the still. I put the coil down and let it drip into the first bottle. "I'll be watching," says my dad, "so no fecking around and spilling it." He disappears through the door with his bottle of shine in his hand, and I know the rest of the work will be up to us. I hold tight to the coil, and Jack and Jerry squat down to watch the shine drip slow into the bottom of the bottle. More than an hour's passed, and the rain starts up again, only harder than before, rattling on the tin roof. We hear old Nancy outside snorting and stomping her hooves for attention. She don't like the rain. I hand bottle number 21 to Jack and says, "Put the blanket on old Nancy when you load this one in the wagon." A few minutes later, when Jack comes back in, he's dangling an empty bottle from 2 fingers. "Landy," says Jack in a loud whisper, "my dad's passed out in the back of the wagon under old Nancy's blanket. Should we fill his bottle again?" "Forget it," I says. "Don't wake him. Leave him there. Maybe he'll drown in the rain." Jerry starts to laugh, and that gets Jack to laughing too, and Jack says it'd be good enough for him if he did drown. "You think it's funny, do you, Jack?" I says. "Do you, Jerry?" "It won't be so funny if my dad wakes up and finds you laughing and carrying on and not filling up the bottles." That shuts up Jerry and Jack both, 'cause there's nothing my dad takes more serious than his shine, and they know it. And if he sobers up to the sound of us laughing, we're sure to get it quick and without a warning. The rest of the bottles fill fast with my dad out to the world. We're careful not to wake him when we fill bottle number 31 and load it into the back of the wagon where my dad's laying, surrounded by bottles of shine. The rain's still coming down, and old Nancy's anxious to go. I run back to the stillhouse to snuff the light and lock the door. With my dad out cold, I hop into the wagon seat and take the reins to old Nancy. The moon's gone behind the night clouds, and I can't see more than a few yards in front of old Nancy's nose. The lower limbs of the bare trees reach out over the trail like the arms of the scarecrows in the field. I think of Grandmother sitting in her rocker chair, telling me, Jack, and Jerry about the devil in the holler, grabbing us, wrapping his bony arms around us, and whisking us away to his fiery pit. I holler, "Get!" and snap the reins, and old Nancy takes off with a start, rattling the bottles in the back of the wagon. "Hold them damn bottles," I says to Jack and Jerry. "Not a one of 'em better be busted when we get back, or you'll get yours from me and my dad. Count on it. Old Nancy's anxious to get back to the warm barn and out of the rain. She tries to pick up her pace, but I slow her down to keep the bottles from knocking. "Whoa!" I says, and she slows down to take the sharp turn in the path heading up the last hill. The cold rain makes the leaves covering the trail slick, and old Nancy loses her footing and tenses up in the reins. We hit that same rock we had trouble with coming into the woods, and the wagon slides off to the side of the trail. The front wheel of the wagon gets lodged against the rock, and old Nancy starts up with a whinny, 'cause that blasted rock is keeping her from her warm barn and bucket of oats. I slap the reins on her rump and holler, "Yah! Git!" But old Nancy can't get her footing enough to pull the wagon over the rock. Her eyes are rolling in their sockets, and she lets out a long snort. We're both trying to get over that rock, and I know she's just as mad as me. I try to back old Nancy out of the mud and away from the rock, but no matter which way I guide her, the wagon keeps sliding back into the same rut on the trail. Jack and Jerry are in the back of the wagon, holding tight to the bottles to keep them from clanking. My dad's still laying in the straw, dead to the world. "Jack," I says, "get up here and take the reins whilst I hop down and push." Jack steps over my dad and scurries up to the front of the wagon and plops down in the seat beside me. I pass the reins to Jack and says, "Hold 'em tight and give old Nancy a lashing when I holler." I jump from the wagon and sink to my ankles in the mud. I try to lift my right leg out and nearly lose my boot. Jerry's sitting in the back of the wagon, holding tight to the bottles, careful not to wake my dad sprawled out in the rain-soaked straw. I make my way through the mud to the rear of the wagon and press my back to the gate and push. I holler, "Git!" and Jack hollers, "Yah!" and cracks the reins on old Nancy's rump. Old Nancy raises her head and pulls the wagon forward till the wheels stops against the rock. "Git!" I holler louder, and Jack yells, "Git!" and cracks the reins again. But no matter how hard old Nancy tries, and no matter how hard I push, the wagon won't budge. "Jack," I says, "jump down and help me push. Let old Nancy pull it on her own. She knows what to do." Jack wraps the reins around the boot rest and jumps down in the mud to help me. All the while, Jerry's holding tight to the bottles in the back of the wagon to keep 'em from clanking. The moon's doing its best to break from the clouds, but the rain keeps coming down in a fine mist. Poor Jerry's soaked to the bone. He pulls the sleeve of his shirt down over his hands to keep him warm. It's the shirt I passed down to Jack when I outgrew it, and then Jack passed it down to Jerry. There weren't much left of it to speak of, all worn and thin, and soaked clean through, clinging to Jerry like a loose layer of skin. My dad's still curled up in his rain slick, hugging his bottle in the back of the wagon. I'm pushing with all my might on the back of the wagon gate with my feet sinking deeper in the mud. All the while I'm wishing my dad would never wake up, like I wish every time he hits the bottle. But he always wakes, and that's what keeps me pushing harder and hollering at old Nancy, "Yah! Get up!" Old Nancy's trying, but she can't get over that rock. I'm gritting my teeth, getting sorer by the minute, when I look over the back of the gate into the wagon, and I see little Jerry doing all he can to hold them bottles in place while my dad's just laying in the back of the wagon sleeping off the shine. "Hold on, Jerry," I says. "We almost got it." With me and Jack pushing and old Nancy pulling, the wagon's rocking something fierce till even my dad's limp body starts rocking with it. One more big push, and my dad slides down the back of the wagon with a crash into the bottles. Shine starts pouring out through the gate, soaking me from shoulders to boots. "No," I shout. "No! Jerry, hold tight to the bottles!" The shine drips out of the wagon gate and soaks my head. My eyes start to burn. We're all sure to get the switch now. Maybe worse. The moon peeks out over the top of the trees. The shine keeps a-drippin', and the rain keeps a-fallin'. I look up, and I see old Nancy rearing her head back and pullin' with all she's got. Her hot breath shoots from her nose into the cold air and fades. Old Nancy's trying, but she still can't get enough traction to pull the wagon over that rock. I'm pushing so hard my legs start to wobble so's I can't control 'em. "Jerry," I says, "grab some straw and toss it under the wheels whilst me and Jack push. Hurry, Jerry, hurry!" Jerry lets loose of the last of the bottles he's holding and starts throwing straw over the side of the wagon. The bottles slide towards the gate and stop quick with a clatter when they reach me dad, laying in the middle of the broken glass, smelling to high heaven like the shine. The rain's beating down on us so hard now I can hardly see. My hair's dripping wet, clinging to my face. Through the mud and the shine burning my eyes, I can see Jerry tossing straw over the side of the wagon just as fast as he can. His arms are small in the loose sleeves of my old shirt, like the boneless arms of grandmother scarecrows fighting in a mad rage against the wind in a storm. But Jerry don't give up. He keeps tossing the straw over the sides of the wagon till there's nothing left but little wisps of straw around my dad's limp body. "Jump down, Jerry," I says. "Shove the straw under the wheels." Jerry jumps over the side of the wagon and lands deep in the mud. He tries to take a first step, but the mud is so thick it holds tight to his feet like a spoon standing straight up in a pot of cold oatmeal. Jerry tugs again, and on the third try he breaks free, leaving his boot in the mud. His wool sock dangles from his foot, but with a quick tug, Jerry slips the sock up his leg and pulls his boot free. "Hurry, Jerry," I says. "If another bottle breaks and my dad wakes up, we're sure as dead." Jerry gathers a bundle of straw in his arms and starts tossing it under the wheels. "Jack, you have to push harder," I says. "Push to the left, now forward." I'm pushing so hard I feel the gate start to slide loose. I grab tight and hold it in place to keep what's left of the shine in my dad from spilling out the back of the wagon. I'm pushing, and Jack's pushing, and we've almost got it. "Jerry," I says, "throw more straw under the wheel. We're almost there. More straw." The last of the bottles at the head of the wagon starts sliding towards the gate, clanking against each other around my dad. I'm thinking so hard about keeping those bottles from breaking and how we're gonna get the switch for sure. I'm not paying attention to little Jerry. He's slipping every step he takes, but he manages to crawl under the wagon between me and Jack, and we're pushing and old Nancy's pulling. The sleeves of my old shirt keep sliding over Jerry's little hands, getting in his way as he tosses straw under the wheel. "Pull up your sleeves, Jerry," I says. "Your sleeves, pull 'em up." But little Jerry's working as hard as any of us, tossing straw under the wheels, and he won't stop for nothing. Old Nancy keeps a-pulling and a-snorting, and one last push from me and Jack is all it takes for the wagon to lurch forward over the rock. The moon pulls the clouds aside and shines bright as a lantern across the wagon. Old Nancy's milky eyes start rolling in their sockets, straining to see what's going on behind her. In the white, bright moonshine as the wagon rolls up and over the rock, I see little Jerry slip in the mud and fall under the wheel, caught by his shirt sleeve. A horrible scream rips open the night. "Holy God," I holler. "Jerry! Jerry! Jack! Get Jerry! He's under the wheel! Get Jerry!" I push hard against the gate with my shoulder to keep the wagon from rolling back, and Jack scrambles under the wagon to reach Jerry. "Whoa, Nancy," I yell. "Whoa! Help me, Landy," Jerry screams. "Help me!" But I can't do a thing, or else the gate on the wagon will come loose and all the shine will spill out the back, and then wouldn't we all get it? We'd get it for sure. Jerry's screams drift out from under the wagon and up into the treetops. With no leaves on the trees to hold back the pitiful noise, Jerry's voice just keeps traveling deep into the empty woods until I can hear it echo across the ravine and travel back to us again, like there's another Jerry screaming from the other side of the ridge. Jack's pulling on Jerry's trousers, trying to pull him free from the wheel, but Jack's slipping in the mud and can't get a hold of little Jerry. I'm still pushing my shoulder to the gate when the wheel rolls forward over little Jerry's neck. And that's all old Nancy needs to pull the wagon up onto the rock and down the other side. I watch as Jerry's face disappears into the mud and straw under the weight of the wheel, and his scream is silenced. "My dad," I holler. "The wagon! My dad! Jerry's stuck under the wagon! My dad! My dad, wake up! Jack! Jack! Wake up, my dad! Jack, wake him up! Shake him!" Jack scampers from under the wagon and climbs into the back to wake my dad. "He's dead to the world, Landy," says Jack. "I can't wake him. He's dead to the world." Tears and mud are stinging my eyes. I choke on my own screams. "Wake him, Jack! Kick him! Kick him!" I'm wishing my dad really was dead to the world. Dead to us all. Maybe then we could all just farm the land proper with the help of Uncle Elvie and Mother, and not have to live on the bad money of my dad's shine. Maybe then we could buy nice things, like a fancy glass pin for Mother's winter coat, so she could walk proud into the church, and Grandmother could head right over to Ruth's grocer and pay up what we own with enough left over to buy a loaf of bread and a pound of cheese sliced so thin you could see daylight through it. And wouldn't we all be happier if only my dad were dead to us all? Little Jerry's half gone under the mud, and he's not moving. I let loose of the wagon gate and the bottles of shine come crashing out the back. My dad rolls out into the mud behind him. I crawl under the wagon and scamper to little Jerry. I rip away my old shirt from his body and pull him free from the mud, hollering all the while, "Jerry! Jerry! Jerry, get up! Get up, Jerry!" But the way little Jerry's head rolls to the side and back, I can tell that he's already gone from this world. I wipe the mud and straw from his face, holding him as close as I can, sitting there under the wagon, rocking him in my arms. Over and over I say his name, wanting him to answer, but down inside, I know that dreadful scream of his would be the last I hear from him. "Jerry!" I cry. "Jerry!" I look up, and Jack's standing in the mud beside my dad, watching me rock back and forth with Jerry in my arms. All the while I'm wondering how I'm going to tell Mother that her baby Jerry's neck was broken under the wheel of the wagon, and how I'm to blame 'cause I let him crawl beneath it to shove straw under the wheel. Why did I let you crawl under the wagon, Jerry? Why didn't I keep you safe in the back with my dad in the shine? Why didn't I, Jerry? Why didn't I? My ears are full. I hear nothing. I hear nothing. Then a long, dark sob snakes from deep inside my chest and coils into the air above me. It echoes back across the ridge like little Jerry's screams. Old Nancy whinnies with a high pitch. Her head bobs up and back as she prances in place and takes her hooves to the mud, ready to take off into the woods. Her eyes roll back in their sockets and her ears strain toward her tail, trying to figure out what's going on behind her. Jack grabs the reins and calms her down. "Whoa, old Nancy! Whoa!" The rain starts up again, and the moon slips behind the November sky. When the wagon clears the woods and reaches the bottom of the hill near the pasture, Grandmother's standing in the field with the scarecrows, waiting for the wagon. She's wringing her hands, wailing into the night sky, pacing in circles and looking back into the woods over her shoulder. Old Nancy smells how Grandmother's afraid and lets out a whinny that curls her lip and starts her eyes rolling in their sockets. She stiffens up and don't want to move. "Yah!" yells to old Nancy and slaps the reins across her back. "Yah!" But old Nancy won't move any closer to Grandmother. And that's when Grandmother raises her hand to the moon and lets out a cry that strips the dark out of the sky. Old Nancy rears up on her hind legs, and the moon slides out from behind the clouds, casting a silver glow over Grandma and the scarecrows in the field. I slap the reins down hard on old Nancy's rump, and the wagon bolts into the clearing, past Grandmother, past the scarecrows, and straight to the barn with me trying to control her. I'm not the one to tell Mother that her baby Jerry is dead. Mother hears Grandmother wailing and old Nancy whinnying, and she runs out to the barn to see what's the commotion. Old Nancy's eyes are rolling blind in their sockets, straining to see my dad laid out in the back of the wagon with Jack holding little Jerry in his arms. I'm not the one to tell Mother. There's noise, high-pitched and wailing, when Mother and Grandmother rush into the barn. Mother sees Jack holding little Jerry. She sees me at the reins, and my dad passed out in the wagon. And then I can't hear a thing, except my heart thumping inside my chest and blood pounding in my ears. I can't hear a thing. I jump into the back of the wagon where Jack's holding little Jerry, and my dad's still passed out with his bottle. I take little Jerry from Jack's arms, and I hold him close to my chest. I see Mother and Grandmother rush to the back of the wagon. I see their mouths moving, and their hands tearing at their faces and pulling on their hair. I can't hear them, but I can feel their screams inside me. Their arms reach into the wagon and drag little Jerry away from me, not knowing which end of him to touch, to hold first. Their hands grab at him, clutching frantic, like he's about to float away, tearing at his clothes to pull him closer. Mother pushes Jerry's wet hair back out of his cold blue face and clears the mud from his eyes. I watch their faces. First Mother, then Grandmother. I see their lips moving, but I can't hear a thing they're saying. My ears are full, like I'm underwater. My head begins to pound with the rush of blood draining from my heart. I stand in the wagon, holding old Nancy's reins. Her eyes roll, and her ears point straight back, trying to hear what's happening in the wagon behind her. In a final swift move, Mother's got little Jerry clutched in her arms, running to the house with Grandmother and Jack following behind. My head feels like it's gonna burst. I'm thinking I'm nearest an inch to the end of my life. The pain's worse than any beating I've ever got from a dad. Old Nancy's still rolling her eyes back, struggling to see what's what. My chest and my head are gonna burst open. I drop to my knees in the back of the wagon. My dad's laying there with his bottle, passed out, looking like he's asleep without a care. Like he can't feel nothing at all. He can't feel nothing at all. And all I want is to feel nothing too. I want to feel nothing like my dad. I pull the bottle from my dad's hands and pop the cork. My head is pounding. I can't hear. I put the bottle to my lips and tip it back to take a long swig. I taste my tears, salty on the lip of the bottle, mixing with the shine. I swallow hard and fast in big gulps like I'm drinking water on a hot day. It burns. My throat burns and shine comes up through my nose. It feels like I swallowed hot coals. I spit it out. My ears open up like I surfaced on the pond, and I can suddenly hear again. But all I can hear is the bottomed out sound of me crying and wailing. Jerry! Jerry! The burn moves to my stomach, but it don't burn the pain away. I tip the bottle back again and drink longer this time, trying to wash away the burn. I start to feel sick, but I can't put the bottle down. I want to feel nothing, like my dad feels nothing. I drink again. I drink again till the burn washes clean inside me, and I fall dizzy into the back of the wagon next to my dad. I begin to feel it, the nothing. I begin to feel the nothing, like my dad. I think about poor dead little Jerry. I tip the bottle again and start to feel more of nothing. I think of Jack and grandmother. My eyes close and open heavy. I think of mother and the pen I want to buy her so she can walk proud into the truth. I think of the bread and cheese sliced so thin I can see daylight through it. I take another swallow of the shine, and I can't hear nothing again. My eyes close. I feel myself sink back into the wagon next to my dad. One last time I open my eyes, and I see old Nancy's blind white eyes looking back at me, bulging in their sockets. The burn from the shine begins to fade, and my screams sink deep into my chest. Jerry! Jerry! I'm feeling more of nothing, more of what my dad feels. I'm feeling nothing. And just before my eyes close and the shine takes me under, I look through the open door of the barn and watch a dark mist move across the moon.
Little dear, what could have brought your life to such an early end on this cold and bright winter morning, so crystal clear? Little dear. Little dear, little dear. The night is cold and I am all alone. The night is cold and I am all alone.